Hi everyone and welcome to my new video. It was finally time to set up my bullet journal for May and I'm really excited to show you this setup as I tried something a bit different with it and I hope you will find some inspiration from this video. Because the snow has finally melted off the roads, I've been biking again and that's the reason why I wanted to draw a bike on my cover page. Before we get into drawing though, I actually cut some Dutch doors for this setup and I was really inspired by Noga's Corner as she has made some beautiful and simple cover pages with Dutch doors and I really wanted to give that a try too. I started off by cutting the cover page so it would kind of look like a mini page and I used my Exacto knife when I was cutting near the notebook's binding. To avoid cutting the page underneath, I also put a thick cardstock under the cover page and that helped a lot, so if you are afraid of cutting Dutch doors, you should definitely give this a try or use a cutting mat instead. Now looking back, I would actually cut the cover page just from the top because now it's very difficult to get to stay in place as my binder clips are too small to hold it. If this is something that bothers you, definitely make the cover page a bit larger and I will definitely keep that in mind for the next time as well. Like I said earlier, I wanted to draw a bike on my cover page as I felt like it really fits this season, although we actually got more snow today, so we will see if the summer will ever come. Here in Finland, every time you think that the spring has finally come, the weather is like, you really thought it was over. Think again. And then the winter comes back. Anyway, I used a 0.3 size pigma micron for drawing the outlines and drawing the bike was actually a bit challenging because there are a lot of lines going to different directions, not to mention that you have to draw two circles that are about the same size. So I was struggling a little bit and definitely used a reference photo as it would have been impossible to draw a bike without it. For the smaller details I used size 0.05 so I would have a bit more variety with the lines, and because I'm still afraid of drawing people, I decided to draw a bird sitting on the bike instead. The style I was going for with this cover was definitely more cartoony, because drawing a realistic bike would have been quite a challenge, and I just prefer the more simple look anyway. For the colors I mainly used Tombow dual brush pens and I will write all the shades that I used in the description along with the other supplies that I used in this video. As pink is still my favorite color and I will never get bored with it, I decided to use that for the bike and I would actually love if my own bike was pink as well, but sadly it's green, which is probably my least favorite color. I don't know why that is because I love plants and flowers. Maybe I just don't like how the green color looks on me. Anyway, I added a little basket to the bike as I wanted to add flowers later, and when I was coloring the basket I kind of colored like a gingham pattern, so it would have more of a basket-like texture I guess. I also added some shadows on the bike by going over some areas a couple times, and this is something I always like to do as it adds a lot more depth to the illustrations. I think this cover page took about 2 hours, but that's only because I did the Dutch doors and was working on multiple pages at once. The illustrations itself didn't take that long and you could definitely leave the Dutch doors out if that's something you don't like. I feel like this illustration is quite basic, but the Dutch doors are what makes this cover page a lot more interesting. I should probably make them more often on other pages than my weekly spreads as well. For the flowers in the basket I used this tippling technique because I felt like it looked better than drawing the flowers with fineliners and then coloring them in. I added some details in the flower bush. Is it bush or bush? Anyway, so I added some details in there with colored pencils so they would stand out a little bit more, especially in the areas where the flower and the basket overlap. I used the colored pencils for adding some shading in the clouds and bike as well, and I think that made this illustration look more finished. I'm so happy that I decided to buy these colored pencils, as I feel like they have elevated my style in a way, and I've been able to do a lot more stuff that I couldn't do before just with markers. With colored pencils you can do a lot more detailed work and get a softer look, which I really like. The only con is that it takes more time to color, especially big areas, but I draw mainly small things, so that hasn't bothered me much. If you don't have water-based markers like Tombow dual brush pens, you could definitely use just colored pencils for this illustration. To add a bit more spring touch, I added some green grass on the ground, which we will hopefully get soon. At the moment we don't even have any leaves on the trees, but I really hope we get them in May, or otherwise I will cry. By the way, I was listening to Taylor Swift's new album when I was filming this, and I really like it so far. I think I prefer the second half, but I don't know, I have to listen to the songs a couple times before I can decide my favorite. Have you listened to Tortured Poets Department? Let me know in the comments, and I would love to hear your thoughts about the album. Anyway, on the page underneath I decided to add this gingham pattern with a light brown color, and I'm not sure yet if this color was the best choice. I really wanted to use pink for it, but at the same time I felt like I should probably try something different, so here's what I came up with. When I was making the gingham pattern, I flipped the cover page back and forth to see which areas it covers, and because I didn't like how the gingham pattern went on the edge of the page, I cut this white part from the Dutch door I cut earlier and added that in the edge to have like a white frame around the pattern. On the page on the left I made just a simple quote page, and I was thinking of doing a spring bucket list, but I felt like I would be kind of late with that, as June is already a summer month, or it's supposed to be. To make the cover page a bit more interesting, I wrote the words I wanted to emphasize with this cursive font, and I really like how it ended up looking. I kept the decorations on this quote page really simple because I didn't want the decorations to show up on the other side of the Dutch drawer, if that makes sense. Because I didn't have a colored paper that fits on the page under the Dutch drawers, I decided to make it myself with Procreate, and this was really simple as I just picked a pink background color and added some texture on top of it so it wouldn't look flat. You probably could do this on computer as well by using a free photo editing software or something. I used a glue tape roller to attach the paper on the page, and this glue roller is difficult to get off from the paper if you put it in the wrong place. So I was struggling a little bit with that and ended up adding a sticker to cover up the excess glue tape so my pages wouldn't stuck together. My cover spread is now done, so let's move on to my monthly spread. Because I had a smaller space than usual, a one-page calendar layout wouldn't have worked, so I ended up making a bigger calendar instead. This time I also won't be having my weekly planning section, and we will see if I will miss it. When I was drawing my calendar, I actually messed it up a little bit and made it too big, which I realized later and was a bit annoyed about. But you know, this happens every now and then, and mistakes are part of bullet journaling anyway. I wasn't sure how to fix the mistake at first, but in the end I just covered it with my white gel pen. It didn't cover it completely, but that doesn't really bother me. But you could also add a sticker or washi tape on top of your mistake to cover it if you want. I just didn't want them to show up on my cover page, and I felt like this was the best way to fix it. I kept the monthly spread super simple and didn't end up adding any decorations in the end, because I felt like the gingham pattern was enough. I used a gel pen from Zebra to write out the weekdays and dates, and this gel pen is from their vintage colors set. I haven't used the other colors much in my bullet journal, but I love using them on my travel journal. And by the way, I have a new travel journal video coming soon, so stay tuned. I've already filmed it and will start editing it after this video. After adding the May header on my monthly spread, it was done and it didn't take much time at all, which was nice for a change. Maybe I should use this type of layout more often as it definitely saves some time. Next we are making my habit tracker, and this time I decided not to use a grid paper like I've done probably every month this year. Instead I made these gingham patterns for the mini calendars and used 2 different shades of pink to have a bit more variety. I kept the spread super simple because there wasn't much room for decorations and it was nice and quick to set up. I'm tracking exactly the same habits as I did last month, so nothing new here. I also wanted to give you an update about my first ever cardigan that I'm currently knitting. I just finished the body of the cardigan yesterday and started making the first sleeve, which I'm very excited about. Anyway, on the bottom I made my step and sleep tracker, and if you are curious about how I'm going to fill it in, I will just mark down my steps with a vertical line and sleep with a dotted horizontal line. I will try to remember to add a photo so you can see what I'm talking about. I will also think of the numbers on the left as thousands when I'm marking down my steps. Like I said earlier, there wasn't much room for decorations, but I still wanted to add a little something, so I ended up adding this cutest dark washi tape that I recently bought on the empty left side, and I think this is from a brand called Bubblesartcraft if you are interested, and I will see if I can find a link that I could add in the description. Then it was time to start working on my weekly spreads, and I once again decided to use a Dutch door layout for them. I also used an Exacto knife to cut near the notebook's binding because it's much easier with that than it is with scissors. By the way, I cut the pages from the 11th dot if you are interested, and used my corner rounding tool to make the sharp corners a bit softer. I again wanted to keep the spread quite simple because I've just preferred that look recently, so for the decorations I added the May title and also a mini calendar because it really helps when I'm setting up my weekly spreads as I can check the dates there. I just realized that I probably should start planning my next bullet journal setup soon, as I can only fit 1 more month in this journal. So far I've really enjoyed using this smaller original size from Notebook Therapy, as it has less pages and the journal doesn't get as heavy as an A5 journal would. I would love to hear how many journals you use in a year, and tell me also which size you prefer to use. Anyway, for the decorations I decided to draw a basket filled with tulips, as that reminds me of spring, and tulips are also really easy flowers to draw. Wow, my neighbor's car was really loud, I hope you couldn't hear that. Anyway, this basket reminds me a bit of my May picnic theme from 2021, as I drew a lot of these in that setup, and I think it's always fun to recreate some parts of your old themes. For the coloring I used Tombow doll brush pens in the shades 772, 192 and 977. I haven't used this exact green shade in a while because it's very summery green for me, but now that the weather is hopefully getting warmer, I felt like it was a good time to use it again, and now I remember why that is my favorite green Tombow shade. I wanted the basket to have very basket-like texture, so I colored that in a very specific way, as you can see. Water-based markers always get darker when you overlap them, so I like to use that to my advantage when I'm coloring, as that's a great way to add shadows and textures. Finally, I added some shading with colored pencils to the tulips because I wanted them to have a bit more depth, and then I decided to add some highlights in the basket to add more texture. For this I used my favorite gel pen, which is the Jelly Roll in size 10. After adding some golden little sparkles, I started working on the weekly layout itself. I really like this pink textured paper that I made and decided to use that for every other box to add a bit more color to the spread. It was a bit tricky to cut the size though, as it doesn't have dots like my journal has, So I cut a paper strip from one of the leftover paper from the Dutch stores to use like a template, as I was too lazy to use a ruler, and it worked out pretty well. For the rest of the boxes I used a light brown color to tie the color scheme together, and I really like how this weekly spread turned out. We will see which layouts I will end up using for the rest of the weeklies, and I might post some Plan With Me reels from that to my Instagram, so you can check the rest of the setup there if you are interested. Now it's time for the final flip through, and I think this setup turned out really cute. I can't wait to start using the spreads, even though I'm going to miss my April theme a bit, and I would love to hear what you think of this setup. Remember to leave a like and also a bird emoji in the comments if you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye bye!